my name is Rachel and I'm here today to do the For the Love of Classics book tag. So this was a tag that was going around a few months ago and I just decided to do it today. I've been reading a lot of classics recently and just having a nice time with that. So I thought this would be a fun book tag to do today. So I'm just going to get straight into the questions. The first question is, why do you read classics and how often do you read classics? The reason that I read classics is definitely that I enjoy the writing style. I enjoy the sort of societal expectations and how that dictates behaviours and conversations, and the way that not adhering to those societal restrictions can cause conflict in the novel or play or whatever. I really enjoy that. I think I've mentioned before, it's kind of like the conversations people have where there's an undercurrent of like hatred or something underneath it, but they won't say it to each other, but they kind of get it across anyway. I love those conversations. Pride and Prejudice has a lot of them. In terms of how many classics do I read, it varies often because my reading kind of just jumps around from genre to genre all the time. I would say I tend to read at least one every 3 months. Recently, it's probably been one every 2 months or maybe one a month, I don't know. I definitely want to read more, but at the same time, I don't like to push myself to read them because when I do that, I don't enjoy it as much. Whereas if I just pick it up in my own time, I will probably adore it and give it the time it deserves. Question number 2 is, what is the period, culture, or country that you haven't read many classics from and would like to? The number one for me, I would say, is Russian classics. So I have one here with me. I have Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. For Christmas in the Vintage Russian Classics editions, I also got Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, my favourite name in the world, and War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. So I'm hoping to read this one soon and then get to those as well. I haven't read any Russian classics, I don't think, and that is something that I really want to change because I think I would enjoy them. And so yeah, there's that one. I also would like to read more stuff from like the American Jazz age because I really enjoy like Fitzgerald's writing, and I think I would enjoy more stuff from that like area. Question number 3 is, what modern book do you think will be a classic in 100 years time? And this was the first book that came to mind for me, and I'm going to stick with it, and it is Grief is a Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. I think the way this is written, the style of it, the way that it kind of combines a narrative story with poetry, but kind of not falling into either category, and I loved this book. I love it so much, and yeah, I could see it being a classic. Question number 4 is, what was the last classic you read? And this is, I think, A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. The next question is, what was the first classic you ever read? This is kind of a hard question to answer. So I think the first classics I ever read, the first 2 are interchangeable because I have no idea in what order which one came first. I used to have a tape deck in my room that I used to listen to when I went to sleep, and I had Alice in Wonderland on there, and I had a lot of books, but the classics that I had were Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, and I had Lord of the Rings. I had this full like 14 tape set. My dad recorded them all, radio performance thing of the book. So one of those is the first one that I read. And in terms of which ones I first like properly read and like physically was there in front of me, Wuthering Heights when I was around 13. Question number 6 is, what is your favourite classic book cover? I wasn't too sure about this, but I have 2 beautiful books here in Switzerland that I thought I would show you. So the first, obviously, is this Anna Karenina copy. I adore it. I also have Mariana by Monica Dickens. This is a Persephone Classics edition, but it is one of the like painted ones, and I am so excited to get to this. This is so beautiful. I read another Persephone book last year, Cheerful Weather for the Wedding by Julia Strachey, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. So I definitely think they pick some good books, and I'm excited to get to this one, and it is beautiful. Question number 7 is classic authors you wish had written more books. The two that immediately spring to mind are Emily Bronte. She only wrote one book while she was alive, Wuthering Heights. It is one of my favourite books of all time, and yeah, I really wish she had wrote more books. And the other one that comes to mind is Oscar Wilde. Although he did do a lot of writing in his life, he only wrote one book, The Picture of Dorian Gray, and I just really enjoy his play The Importance of Being Earnest and some of his other writing, and I just would have liked him to have wrote more books, and I think they would have been really interesting and really like challenged the sort of boundaries society had at the time. So that would have been really, really cool, and I wish he'd wrote a few more. Question number 8, what is your least favourite classic? This is the easiest question to answer on this list. It is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I hate that book. I have never got through it. The first time I read it, I think I got 100 pages in and just couldn't. The second time I read it was for a Gothic class at university, so I really, really tried to push myself through, and I think I got 50 pages from the end and just still could not do it. Oh, I hate that book so much. I think it's one of the worst books. I don't like the style of it. I don't like the treatment of women in it. No. It's not my thing. Question number 9 is, what is your favourite translated classic? And this is obviously going to be The Count of Monte Cristo. It is my favourite book of all time, and it's translated. It's translated from the French, and it's fantastic. It's brilliant. I love it. Question number 10 is your favourite modern classic, and they are counting this as anything published after 1900. I think my favourite modern classic is probably The Colour Purple by Alice Walker. This book really just like came out of nowhere for me, and it had so many amazing parts of the story, and I think I went into it expecting it to be dealing with like one issue and representation and stuff like that, and it just represented everything. It represented like women and feminism, it represented LGBT people and lesbianism, it represented people of colour and slavery and being like sold off into marriage and things like it just has everything, and it's fantastic and amazing, and I definitely need to pick up some more Alice Walker. Question number 11 is classic literary places you would like to visit. Number 1 on my list is Chatsworth House. I have been to Chatsworth House twice now. The first time that I went, I was so drunk the night before that I couldn't go inside because I thought I would be sick in there, and that would be just the worst possible thing. So I just sat in the gardens outside while everyone else went in and read Game of Thrones, actually. I remember that I was reading Game of Thrones. And then the second time I went with my girlfriend because her parents live in Bakewell and we were visiting them. So we like walked over to Chatsworth from Bakewell, which was really, really nice. And then when we got there, we met up with her parents and sat by the river, and it was all very nice, but I've still not been inside, and that really annoys me. So yeah, I really, really want to go inside the house instead of just visiting it and never going in. Question number 12 is first classic you would recommend for a child. I think it depends what kind of child you have, what like they're interested in, what kind of films they watch. I think if you like adventure stories, The Hobbit is a great place to start by J.R.R. Tolkien. Alice in Wonderland, that's where I started and I loved it. Get audiobooks of classics. Like, I used to adore audiobooks when I was younger. That's where I started anyway, and it went well. So question number 13 is a classic you think is mistitled and what new title you would give it. I can think of a book, but I can't think of a title I would give it. The book I would like to pick is Hard Times by Charles Dickens. The name is terrible, and I know like people go through hard times and the book is about hard times, but like it's just a bad name and it just starts the whole thing off in a bad light, basically, for me. Yeah, I really don't like the title, but I do love the story. I don't know what title I would give it. I don't know. I'm going to just like not answer that. Question 14 is your favourite classic that you would like to recommend to everyone. Obviously, The Count of Monte Cristo is my favourite book of all time, and I would recommend it to everyone ever. Also, Wuthering Heights, that is a fantastic book. Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, that's one of the first classics I read. I remember doing it at GCSE, and I didn't like it when I first read it, but the more that we studied it and the more I learned about it, the more I really, really, really enjoyed it. So I think that is a fantastic book. A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams, that's fantastic. A View from the Bridge by Arthur Miller, that isn't one that he's usually remembered for, but it is one that I definitely highly, highly enjoyed. Macbeth by Shakespeare, I think that's one of my favourite Shakespeare plays. I prefer it to Hamlet. There's so much more action going on and so much more like interesting themes. For me, I definitely prefer it. Yeah, I don't know what else I recommend. I mean, it only asked me to recommend one, so I don't actually need to give a full list, so I'm going to stop. The last question is to tag people, but this tag was going around quite a while ago, and I feel like everyone's probably done it already, and so yeah, if you want to do it, do it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!